guys, it's Kimberly with Midshore Solutions. Guess what? I'm not really happy. So basically what you just looked at was my 2.5-year-old floor that we just had to rip up. So previously, this is what we were facing in March of 2018. We had rotted subfloor that had rotted from my crawl space, and we had to replace it. So we had to rip up all of our flooring and put down the new flooring 2.5 years ago. So most of you don't know, I used to work for a crawlspace encapsulation company, and I knew what a bad crawlspace could do to your house from working there. However, I didn't think it would happen to me. It's kind of like accidents. You don't think it's going to happen to you, and then it does, and you're left trying to figure out what just happened. So to help you guys out so you don't have to go through what I've gone through twice, let's talk about your crawl space real quick. Do any of the following apply to your home or crawl space? Does your crawl space have open vents and a dirt floor? Vented dirt floored crawl spaces are still permitted by building codes in many areas despite the moisture and mold problems that they cause. Do members of your family have allergies or asthma symptoms? Airborne mold spores and dust mites from damp crawl spaces and basement areas are among the most common indoor air pollutants and allergens. Does your crawl space have fiberglass insulation? Fiberglass insulation is the wrong material to use in your crawl space. It absorbs moisture, loses its R value, attracts mold, promotes wood rot, and will fall out of place. So let's talk about the signs of a crawl space problem. Many homes that were built on a crawl space foundation suffer from moisture problems, especially those of us in the southeast United States. And crawl space problems can cause issues upstairs as well. Upstairs in your living area, you might experience musty odors, buckled hardwood floors, high humidity, condensation and rot around floor registers, cold floors, and high heating and cooling costs. However, in the crawl space, you may have mold and moisture damage, condensation or sweating on your air conditioning ductwork or equipment, condensation on pipes, soggy insulation, hanging or falling insulation, insect and pest infestations, rotted wooden framing, or water on the dirt or concrete floor. So basically, moisture is the most common problem in a vented, unsealed crawl space. The humidity and excess moisture leads to mold growth, wood rot, and pest infestations. Crawl space moisture often migrates upstairs through the stack effect, which contributes to structural damage, musty odors, and those high energy bills. Crawl space encapsulation is the most recommended solution to prevent crawl space moisture, and a dehumidifier designed for crawl spaces can ensure a dry crawl space and prevent mold growth. A dehumidifier basically controls the humidity and removes the moisture from the air to prevent mold and property damage and make the whole house more comfortable. Now, the practice of building dirt crawl spaces with open vents is an older and outdated way of installing a crawl space. Newer crawl space science debunks the old mythology. A home with a dirt crawl space costs more to heat and cool. If your crawl space is vented, those vents make your floors cold upstairs. This is not only uncomfortable, but it also costs you much more to heat your house. Houses with dirt crawl spaces have damp air. Damp air is more difficult to heat and cool, which requires more energy, thus costing more money. Damp air puts more of a load on your HVAC system, and everyone knows they need to run their AC more on a humid day. But what about humidity from inside the building? The same thing. If you get rid of the humidity from your crawl space, you save money on heating and cooling costs. Since crawl spaces were built to provide a buffer between the house and its inhabitants and the damp, wet earth below, this seemed to make sense for many decades, especially since there was also a convenient place to put utility cables and ductwork that were used to circulate conditioned air throughout your house. Today, however, we understand that a crawl space, instead of serving as a buffer, actually collects water and serves as a repository for humid air. This humid environment introduces a number of hazards, which includes the mold and mildew growth, musty odors, moist sills and framing that can lead to structural damage and pest infestations. So crawl space encapsulation reflects the modern methodology of how to best improve the environment in your home's crawl space. Crawl space encapsulation, or sealing, is the treatment that building scientists recommend to turn your damp, dirty, moldy crawl space into a clean, dry space where mold can't grow. So building a crawl space with vents was meant to ensure that the air inside the home could be channeled outside. Instead, the method pulls the air from the outside into the crawl space. That outside air is unconditioned, which means it's not heated or cooled with air conditioning, and that brings in heat in the summer and cold in the winter. Since your crawl space is not separated from the housing envelope, your floor is cold in the winter and the whole house is affected. Now, to prevent this, builders will sometimes install crawl space insulation on the floor joists in order to protect the house from the crawl space environment. Meaning that one option for keeping that cold winter air from the crawl space from entering the floor above is to insulate above a crawl space. Insulation is never perfect. The joists are filled with obstructions, including ducts and pipes, cables, and light fixtures, and the presence of plumbing, cables, and registers create gaps that degrade the performance of insulation. So fiberglass insulation itself is not an effective barrier. Air can pass through it, unlike some other forms of insulation. And you can see this for yourself by examining fiberglass insulation that has been in place for several years. The fibers are often discolored by dust and dirt. In effect, the bat has functioned more like a filter than a barrier. Even if the insulation was effective, it often meant that air ducts would have to travel through a cold crawl space, losing some of the heat that they were supposed to deliver. Plumbing pipes became more susceptible to freezing. So air in the crawl space is naturally cool because it's shaded from solar radiation and it's in direct contact with the earth. So in the summer, when the crawl space vents and other openings let warm, humid air in, the crawl space cools it. And as the air cools, it cannot hold as much moisture as before, so relative humidity rises dramatically. But where does that moisture go? Unfortunately, when the cooling air has more moisture than it can hold, the extra moisture ends up on floor joists, insulation, beams, your floor, and anything else stored in your crawl space. This can have extremely detrimental effects on your crawl space. Just ask me. When the relative humidity reaches 100%, the air is holding as much moisture as it possibly can at its current temperature. And as humid summer air enters the cool crawl space, the relative humidity rises. This easily happens. So this condensation, combined with the organic material found in wood, boxes, insulation, and other objects found in a crawl space, creates the perfect environment for mold to grow. Any organic surface will quickly be covered in mold and rot, and mildew will form wherever it can. And as mold grows, it will send millions of spores into the air. Insects such as termites will enter the basement and feed off of your rotting wood. Rodents move into the home and feed off of the insects, creating an even larger problem. And dust mites live and thrive in the humidity, sending their fecal matter into the air that you breathe. In addition to creating an environment for mold, condensation also ruins the insulation you have in two ways. Wet insulation makes fiber-based insulation, such as fiberglass, ineffective by reducing the R value. Moisture adds weight. Despite the support, the insulation sags and compresses. The gaps and openings further degrade performance, and in addition, insulation can support the mold growth and sometimes house insects. Mice will make their homes in your insulation and leave feces there, causing health problems, and they may enter the main area of your home as well. This insulation will fall to the floor from the excessive moisture that it absorbs, creating a bigger mess. Without the insulation, the problems of cold floors and poor indoor air quality will return. Heating bills will rise, and your crawl space will look like a mess, and it's filled with mold and vermin, all of which are going to affect the value of your home when it comes time to sell it. Now, regardless of whether the floor above your crawl space is insulated and the condition of your insulation, there is air movement between your crawl space and your home, and it's driven by that stack effect or convection. Warm air in the upper level or attic of your home rises and is expelled through the windows, vents, cracks, and air gaps. As it rises, air from the lower levels of your home rush in to fill the vacuum. Those lower levels include, you guessed it, your crawl space. But how does that affect your crawl space? Air from your crawl space enters your home along with everything in it. Odors, mold spores, dust mite, feces enter your living area. This can cause a variety of respiratory problems, including allergies and asthma. And air, often filled with more moisture, gets sucked into the crawl space from outdoors. In this sense, a poorly designed crawl space acts as a bad air machine. The old practice of vents in crawl spaces did not perform as they were originally thought to, so a new approach to crawl space design was needed. Encapsulation. Encapsulating completely and permanently separates your home from the environment of the surrounding earth. A thick, durable material similar to a pool liner, called a vapor barrier, lines the walls and floors of your crawl space. And in a crawl space, a 20 mil thickness is preferred. So you can't just run to Lowe's or Home Depot and buy plastic, since vapor barriers are designed to keep your crawl space free of moisture, mold, insects, and dirt. Prior to encapsulating your crawl space, it is important to seal off your foundation vents and other outside air leaks. But what does that do? Once your crawl space is sealed, humidity from the earth and outside air cannot enter. In many cases, after encapsulation is complete, the relative humidity levels of the crawl space drop from 80% to 35%. Installing a dehumidifier in the crawl space will cause your below grade area to be drier, cleaner, healthier, and more energy efficient. By lowering the relative humidity, the air in your crawl space will be easier to heat and cool. Not only will it dry the air, but as it blows the air around the crawl space, anything else that is saturated with water, including wood and insulation, will dry out as well. And when the relative humidity of your crawl space drops below 50%, the environment will be inhospitable to dust mites and most types of mold. So overall, if the humidity of your crawl space is below 50%, you're golden. But how many people really check the humidity of their crawl space? I didn't. However, I strongly advise you to purchase a meter and stick it in your crawl space that you can monitor from inside your home. You can spend maybe $15 on one, or you can get a more expensive version. However, the cheaper ones will do just fine. And monitor the humidity in your crawl space. This is a very, very costly repair. And the worst part of it is, this repair could have been avoided. So this is basically just the first part of our crawl space encapsulation. We're sealing off the vents, we're leveling the ground, and then I'm going to spray Boracare, which is a borite solution, which is basically an organic salt that dissolves in water, and that kills any wood-destroying fungus. You can typically just use bleach and water for mold. However, wood-destroying fungus is not killed by bleach and water. So that's where we're at right now. And stay tuned for part 2 when we actually start encapsulating. By the way, for those of you that don't know, on Halloween night, my husband and I went to the firehouse for a fire call, and the trick-or-treaters had found a kitten, which is now named Milo, and brought it to the firehouse in hopes that I would stop it from getting ran over. So we took Milo home, and Milo decided to help us in the crawl space. And Milo has become an addition to the Courthammer family. So, yep, here's Milo, just hanging out in the crawl space. So anyway, guys, thanks so much for tuning in. As always, hit that subscribe button, hit that thumbs up button. Stay tuned. We have way more videos coming, and we hope you guys are enjoying the content. Feel free to leave a comment below. And, well, monitor the humidity in your crawl space, please. I will post a link in the description to where I purchased my humidity meter from. It has an app. It is amazing. You can monitor it right from your phone from the Bluetooth. And once again, thanks y'all. Have a great evening. Bye.